Hello again, Algebra 1. This is Q4 Week 6. This week we're going to look at work word problems. So these type of word problems come up a lot on basically any test you're ever going to take, like SAT, PSAT. It's kind of been the theme the past couple of weeks. Work word problems, I want you to keep in mind, everything we've done, all the stuff we've done for the past few weeks, everything can be reduced or turned into a ratio or rate. If you remember that, these are going to be a lot easier. If you see the word ratio or rate, you want to think fractions. If you can turn things into a fraction and then have a proportion word problem, everything's going to be so much easier. So work word problems are going to involve situations kind of like there's one person who can paint a whole house in 6 hours. This other person can paint a whole house in 5 hours. How long would it take them to paint the house together? So these types of problems are work. How much work you're doing in a certain amount of time. So we're just going to dive into an example to start with. We don't really have any vocabulary this week, so we're just going to go straight into doing some problems. Okay, example. Suppose one painter can paint the entire house just going with the painting a house example. So suppose one painter can paint the entire house in 12 hours. And a second painter takes 8 hours to paint a house the same size. How long would it take the two painters together to paint the house? Alright, so this is a little tricky. This is a little weird. So here's what we're going to do. So we're going to start thinking about hourly rate. So that's going to be the easiest way to sort out what's going on. So painter number 1 can paint the entire house in 12 hours. Painter number 2 takes 8 hours. So I start thinking, well, painter 1, 12 hours total. Painter number 2, 8 hours total. So let's think, if painter number 1 can paint the whole house in 12 hours, how much of the house can he paint in 1 hour? We want to think in terms of per hour. So if he takes 12 hours total, every hour, there's 12 total of them, so 1 hour, he would paint 1/12 in 1 hour. Now let's think about painter number 2. Painter number 2 takes 8 total hours. So if I want to know how much of the house does he paint in 1 hour, he paints 1/8 in 1 hour. So if they're both working at the same time, painter number 1 paints 1/12 of the house in 1 hour. Painter number 2 paints 1/8 of the house in 1 hour. So let's add these up and see how much can they do together in 1 hour. To do this, I need to make my fractions have common denominators. So I'm going to change them both into a fraction with 24, because I know 12 times 2 is 24, and 8 times 3 is 24. So 12 times 2 is 24, so then I got to multiply 1 times 2, so I get 2 on the top. And then 8 times 3 is 24, multiply 1 times 3, I get 3 on the top. So in 1 hour, working together, these two painters can paint 5/24 of the job in 1 hour. Seems a little weird, but that's okay. So now I'm going to write an expression talking about how much of the job, because we don't need to know how much per hour, we need to know how long will it take them to do the entire house. So working together, I don't know how much it is yet, so I'm just going to say it takes them 1 t. That's how much time it takes, 1/t per hour. So I'm saying they take, t is total time, and 1/t is how much it takes them to do for 1 hour. So t is the total time, and then 1/t is how much in 1 hour. So I know 1/t is how much time it takes them, or how much they get done in 1 hour. So I know that's going to be equal to what I already calculated for how much of the job they can finish in an hour, right? So that's 5/24. So 1/t is the amount of that they get done in an hour. 5/24 is the actual one that we know. So this is just solving proportions. We can just do the butterfly method. 1 times 24 is 24. And that equals 5 times t. So to solve this problem, I'm going to divide both sides by 5. And when I do this right side, 5t divided by 5, I am left with t. And on the left side, I've got 24 divided by 5. Throw that in a calculator and you get 4.8. So this is my answer. We know that the total time it'll take them together to paint the house is 4.8. 4.8 what? We gotta always have our units. So total time is 4.8 hours. Okay, let's do another example. Get some space over here. Okay, so working alone, Natalie can dig a 9-foot by 9-foot hole in 3.5 hours. Shauna can dig the same hole, or the same size hole, in 5 hours. How long would it take them to dig the hole together? Okay, so just like we did in the first example, we're going to take a look and we're going to see one person takes 3.5 hours. It doesn't really matter in this problem that it's 9 feet by 9 feet because they're digging the same size hole. If I change the size of the hole, there'd be more math to do, but I'm not changing the size of the hole. They're digging the same size hole. One of them takes 3.5 hours. The other one takes 5 hours. So we can do similarly to what we did in the first example. I can say, how long does it take? How much of this do they dig in 1 hour? So I can say 1 over 3.5 plus 1 over 5. So it takes Natalie, she can dig 1 over 3.5 of the hole in 1 hour, and Shauna can dig 1 over 1/5 of the hole in the hour. So I look at this and I'm like, oh, that's not a good fraction. You're right, that's not. So I'm going to change this first fraction by multiplying top and bottom by something to get rid of the decimal. If it's 0.5, that's pretty easy. I can just multiply top and bottom by 2 and get 2 over 7 plus 1 over 5. So in this one, to change my fractions to have a common denominator, it's going to be easy. I'm just going to take 2 over 7 and multiply it by 5 over 5. I'm just going to use the opposite denominator. So 1/5 I'm going to multiply by 7 over 7. If I use the opposite denominator, then that will give me easily fractions that I can use. So now I'm going to multiply 5 times 2 is 10, and then 5 times 7 is 35. And then I've got 1 times 7, so that's 7. 5 times 7 is 35. So I've got 17 35ths. Cool, so just like we did in the first example, I can take the 17 35ths and say that 1 over the total is equal to 17 35ths. Then I can do my butterfly method. 17 times t is 17t, and that's equal to 1 times 35, which is 35. Okay, to solve, I'm going to divide both sides by 17. Those cancel out, giving me just 1t, so I've just got t left. And then I'm going to grab a calculator, and I'm going to do 35 divided by 17. And that gives me 2.06. So it'll take them 2.06 hours to dig the holes together. If I wanted to know in minutes, I would do 0.06 times 60. Because that's how many, there's 60 minutes in an hour, and that would be 3.6. So it would be 2 hours and 3.6 minutes. So your problems this week are going to be just like this, and I will totally accept 2.06 for your answer. Please tell me units. So don't tell me 2.06, tell me it's 2.06 hours. But I don't expect you to change it to hours and minutes like this. You can just leave it as a decimal form. So make sure you've been pausing, taking notes, and write down any questions you have, and I will see you soon on Zoom.